and accept. I am bound to taste the truth of the China's words. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. We seem to keep showing up. Wonder why. I'm just going to assume there's a good reason. Keep coming. Well, for a third time, and I think the last time, that we'd explore a little bit more from Master Dogen's journal about his time in China with his Chinese teacher Ruijing in his mid-20s. And just briefly to recall that this was an undated text found after his death by his attendant, by his Jisha, Ajo, and I'll read you the colophon at the end. It's very sweet. He was quite moved to find this. And you would be, wouldn't you? You know, this teacher you'd studied and lived with for decades, really intimate and close with them, but with a certain degree of formality, I'm sure. But then tidying up their room to find a beautiful journal, must have been quite a moment. If it was a journal that we're not really sure, it's possible Dogen wrote it as kind of a retrospective imagining of his time in China to kind of explain a little more his understanding. We don't know. Who knows? So his conversations included plenty of sort of subtle philosophical discussion, which I tried to touch on a little bit, and some really practical stuff too. So I thought, let's do a few practical ones. Ruijing instructed me, when you do zazen, place your tongue on the roof of your mouth, allow it to press behind the front teeth. If after 40 or 50 years of zazen practice, you are accustomed to sitting without drooping or becoming drowsy, then it will be all right to close your eyes. Well, that was great. For those not so accustomed to zazen, less than 40 or 50 years, we should sit with the eyes open. If you sit long and are tired, it's all right to shift the position of your legs. This has been directly transmitted by the Buddha for 50 generations. So that's why we don't close our eyes for quite a while. Ruijing said, during zazen, do not lean against the wall, the screen, or the back of the chair. If you do, it will cause you to become ill. You should sit with straight back, following the guidelines for zazen, never violating them. I thought that was interesting to hear that they did sit in chairs. So there's instruction there for sitting in a zazen in chair, to sit upright on the chair. And I always feel like I should modify or say something about the perfect descriptions of posture in these traditional texts, because it would be pretty easy for us to stress ourselves out trying to, like this. I've tried it. You probably have too. It doesn't work out very well. But we make some effort, to be upright, to be awake. But please let it be gentle. And yeah, the place to fix your posture is not so much, as like at the chiropractor's or the Rolfing place, not on the cushion, but to make an effort to be upright with the body that you ended up with. Anyway, more from Ruijing, more practical stuff. If you get up from zazen to do walking meditation, do not walk in a circle, but go in a straight line. If after 20 or 30 steps you want to turn around, always turn to the right, and always begin your steps with the right foot, then the left foot. So it's just endless refinement here, isn't there? Yeah. Which foot did you begin with tonight? You don't know? Oh. You're just assuming you did it wrong, basically. Another time, Ruijing was also talking about kinhin. When you get up from zazen to walk, you should practice the method of slow walking meditation. Do not go more than half a step with each breath. So this is an old tradition we're trying to live into here, going so slow. Another time, Ruijing said about Zazen, in Zazen, it is possible to develop samadhi by placing the mind in various locations. However, I would say, during Zazen, you should set your mind on the palm of your left hand, which is the one on top. The palm of your left hand, so in the mudra. This is the way correctly transmitted by Buddha ancestors. And actually, Mel Weitzman used to recommend this. I remember him saying this. Put your mind in your hands, put your mind in your mudra, and really pay attention to your mudra. Possibly Suzuki Roshi said that to him. And there are also some interesting suggestions, not just about the practical technique of all this, but also about the spirit and the feeling of the practice. You know, sometimes a little poetical or a little indirect, but this one I think is very direct. Ruijing said, the world-honored one, this is the Buddha, said that hearing and thinking about the way is like being outside the gate, but Zazen is like coming home and sitting calmly inside. Therefore, the merit of doing Zazen even for one moment is immeasurable. I have been practicing the way for over 30 years without ever turning back, and although I am 65 years old, I am more determined than ever. You should practice with this intensity as if you had received the prediction of enlightenment from the golden mouth of Buddha himself. And that's a feature, you know, in many of the Mahayana sutras, the Buddha, one of the things that happens in the career, the many lifetime career of a bodhisattva who's heading towards Buddhahood, is when you get pretty close, you somehow run into a Buddha, and the Buddha predicts that you'll be a Buddha someday. So that's a thing that happens. So imagine that had happened, and sit with that. He says intensity, or at least it's translated as intensity, and of course we can change it a little bit, you know. Devotion, ease, love, you know, joy, with some energy, you know. With oops, I just put my hands upside down. Our minds in our palms, and Buddha's golden mouth whispering in our ears. Beautiful, huh? Another one kind of about the spirit of this. And here he's going to do a little comparing with other sort of styles of Buddhism. The Zazen of Arhats and Pratyeka Buddhas is free from attachment, but it lacks all-embracing compassion. This is very different from the Zazen of Buddha ancestors, where all-embracing compassion and the vow to awaken all sentient beings is the highest priority. So Arhats and Pratyeka Buddhas represents like early Buddhism, where the ideal's a little more just chilling out in a very deep, profound way. Stillness and peace, you know. So they're free from attachment, that's great, but the compassion isn't there in this way of looking at it. And he goes on, people outside the way in India, so non-Buddhists, also practice Zazen, but this Zazen still has the three problems of attachments, wrong views, and pride. So it is utterly different from the Zazen of Buddha ancestors. Shravakas also practice Zazen. It's another style of practice, but their compassion is limited. They do not penetrate the reality of all with wisdom. Instead, they improve themselves and thus remove themselves from the creative seed of the Buddhas. So their Zazen too is utterly different from that of Buddha ancestors. So that's pretty interesting, huh? So if you get into self-improvement, you've created some separation from all this. You've removed yourself from the creative seed of the Buddhas. I don't know in which sense they meant seed there. He goes on. The very essence of Buddha ancestors' Zazen is the vow to accumulate Buddha qualities from the moment of arousing the aspiration for enlightenment into the endless future. Buddha ancestors never forget or abandon sentient beings. They have compassion for all creatures, even insects, and make a constant effort to save them all. And they turn over whatever merit is produced from their practice to sentient beings. Because of this vow, Buddha ancestors always practice Zazen in the desire realm. So in this mixed up place, this is where we practice. In our everyday world, which has great opportunities for influencing cause and effect. Buddha ancestors practice this way life after life, world after world, and attain great flexibility of mind and heart. So that was all Ruijing speaking. Then Dogen says, I bowed and said, how do we attain this flexibility of mind and heart? Ruijing said, to actualize Buddha ancestors dropping off body and mind is the essence of this flexibility. That's why dropping off body and mind is called the mind seal of Buddha ancestors. I bow deeply. Thank you. So this is a little bit of a confusing phrase. It's a favorite of Dogen's, which obviously he got in China from Ruijing. Some kind of deep release, letting go of our idea, all ideas of who we are, letting go of the separation between self and other, because you're letting go of the idea that there is such a thing as self and other, dropping away body and mind. It means awakening. So that's a little more complicated, but about the spirit of this, that it's about compassion and letting go. And then one more in this kind of theme. Ruijing really encouraged young Dogen to really feel the presence of the ancestors. Like that's a really tangible thing, not just an idea. He said, the ruins of the place where the Tathagata got up from Zazen and did walking meditation still exist in the Udanya kingdom in India. That place still exists. Also, layman Vimalakirti's house still exists today, and the foundation stones of Jeddah Grove Monastery have not been buried. These are scenes from famous Buddhist stories. And when people go to examine these sacred places, the results of their measures really differ. Some measure long, some measure short. So you see it in different ways, Some find the stones close together, others find them farther apart. And their findings correspond. And this is the vitality of the Buddha ancestors. So these places still exist, but there's something dynamic about them, right? Something still changing, something in motion, humming with Dharma, And then he says to Dogen, you should know that the bowl and robe, as well as the fist and nostrils of the ancestors, which have been transmitted to us in China, cannot be definitively measured. It's measureless. I stood up and bowed my head to the floor, shedding tears of joy. They're strange but beautiful, aren't they? Yeah. And the last thing I want to highlight is they have a very sweet discussion of a poem that Ruijing wrote, and which Dogen loved. And he wrote about it later in his writings. The poem is called Wind Bell. And a wind bell is like just this little bell that hangs on all the eaves of the buildings. See that? Somebody here has a picture of it in their Zoom screen. Joan, maybe, yeah. So next time you're on Zoom, tell Joan to turn off her camera and you can see a wind bell. We saw them all over in Japan. If you look for them, they're everywhere. And they only ring if it's pretty windy. They had some respect for their sanity because there's a lot of them on the roof. So here's the poem by Ruijing. The real body is a mouth hanging in emptiness, whether the wind blows from the east, west, south, or north. It joins the whole universe in chiming out prajna. Ta-ting, ta-ting, ta-ting. It's a pretty literal translation. Here's a little more poetic one by somebody else. Whole body like a mouth hanging in space, not asking if the wind is east, west, south, or north. For all others equally it chatters wisdom. Chin ten tong and chin ten tong. They went for a little more for the sounds, I guess. I don't know what the original character is. You would think somebody wouldn't make up those sounds. So anyway, that's the poem that Dogen appreciated, and he asked his teacher about it. This mouth of emptiness, ringing in emptiness. I asked my teacher, I heard your voice on the wind bell. The first line says the entire body is a mouth hanging in emptiness. And the third line says joining the whole universe and chiming out prajna. What is this emptiness? Is it just the lack of form? People who doubt the way do say this, and nowadays even students of the way do not understand Buddha Dharma. They regard the spaciousness of the blue sky as emptiness. This is regrettable. And there's an inside joke there. The Chinese use the same character for sky as for emptiness, but you can tell by the context which one it is. Ruijing said, emptiness is no other than prajna, wisdom. Wisdom. Emptiness is wisdom. It's not the lack of form. Emptiness is neither having nor not having hindrances. Therefore, it is not emptiness in the sense of lack. It is not one-sided reality. Elders in different places have not clarified even form. How can they clarify emptiness? I said, well, your verse on the wind bell is supreme. Even if they had numberless eons, our elders would never be able to compose a verse like this. Brother monks should venerate it. Although I have come from a remote land and am not well versed in Dharma, I have read collections of Zen masters' teachings, like the transmission of the lamp, the wide lamp, the successive lamp, and the universal lamp, so big books, as well as the recording sayings of the masters, and I have not seen anything like your wind bell verse. It is my good fortune to have seen it. I wet my robe with tears of joy and bow down day and night in appreciation of its straightforwardness and beautiful rhythm. Then it says, Ruijing was about to ride off in a sedan chair. So I guess this whole conversation was like in the parking lot, He smiled and said, your words are deep and your spirit is outstanding. I composed this verse when I was at Qingliang Monastery. At the time, many people praised it, but none of them spoke as you have done. I acknowledge you have a sharp Dharma eye. When you compose a verse, you should do it in the same manner. I love the end of that. So it's wonderfully supportive of the student, isn't it? To say, yeah, thanks. You have a good eye for poems, and I'm looking forward to hearing yours.
Would you read that, the first one again?
Yeah, the translation or the statement.
I think it's this translation here.
I'll read the whole thing. We have time. Okay, so literal translation of the poem. The real body is a mouth hanging in emptiness. When the wind blows from the east, west, south, or north, it joins the universe in chiming out prajna, wisdom. Ta-ding, 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 ta-ding. Or, the whole body like a mouth hanging in space, not asking if the wind is east, west, north, or south. For all others equally, it chatters wisdom. Chin ten ton, ryon chin ten ton. So first Dogen asks about the first and third verses. The entire body is a mouth hanging in emptiness, joining the whole universe and chiming out prajna. And he asks like a wonderful beginner question. This kind of thing makes me wonder if he wrote it later, though. It's like, it's hard to imagine the Dogen we know and love asking something this naive. What is emptiness? Like way fancier ways you could say that. So it makes me wonder if he was writing it later in life and putting words in his young mouth to just make a useful exchange for us to learn from. I don't know. But anyway, what is this emptiness? Is it lack of form? people say that. Are they right? And then Ruijing's answer is really a beautiful primer on emptiness, actually. Emptiness is no other than prajna wisdom. It's not lack of form. Emptiness is neither having nor not having hindrances or anything. Therefore, it is not emptiness in the sense of lack. It is not one-sided reality. Right? So if emptiness is beyond conceptual division, you can't say it's not something, right? So that's already dividing, you know. You can only say it's kind of not something, you know. Elders have not clarified it. How could we? Elders have not clarified form. How could they clarify emptiness? So it's hard to understand. And then Dogen praises the verse at great length. I wonder if the sedan chair carrier, the sedan chair monks were like, come on, gotta get going here. Shut up, Dogen. Your verse is supreme. Even if they had numberless eons, the elders would never compose a verse like this. But other monks should venerate it. Even though I've come from a remote land, I'm not well versed. I've read the collections, and I've never seen anything like your verse. It is my great fortune to see it. My robe is wet with tears of joy, and I bow day and night for this beautiful poem. And then Ruijing's beautiful reply, your words are deep, your spirit is outstanding. I composed this verse when I was at Xingliang Monastery, and at the time many people praised it, but none as you have done. I acknowledge that you have a sharp Dharma eye, and when you compose a verse, you should do it in the same manner. And it's kind of hard for us, I think, with translated Chinese poetry, because there's very particular styles, and there's probably rhyme and a sort of pattern of the tonality. You know, they have rising and falling tones. So it'd be beautiful if we had a recording of it being read in Chinese. And same number of characters per line almost always. So it's this block of elegant calligraphy with all these layers of tonality and meaning, and you know, so we just have funny old English, you know. So. And Dogen did later in Shobogenzo, especially in this one essay called Empty Space, about emptiness. He quotes Ruijing's poem that he had heard decades before in China. So here's the colophon. This is Ajo, his assistant, writing after he's died. And this was like maybe 2 years after he died. On the 10th day, 12th month, and 5th year of the Kencho era, comes out to 1253, this was copied in the abbot's room in the Eihei Monastery in Echizen. The text was found among the late teacher's posthumous documents. It was in the form of a draft and may not be complete. I shed many tears in my regret that the work was never completed. And so I think from that we're supposed to understand he just copied the whole thing, you know. There's no photocopier, right? So that's what you'd do. You'd sit down and you'd copy it. It'd take you a while. And every stroke, I think, would have a certain meaning. So I don't have anything too brilliant to say about all this tonight, or themes for discussion, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts. Some of you've been to some of these talks, maybe all three of them. What do you think about hearing about all this? It's interesting, huh? Getting kind of a sense of Dogen as a person, a young student in China, and whether it's a little exaggerated or retrospectively fabricated. I don't know if it matters too much. It gives you that feeling. Any thoughts?
Tim, this is kind of an aside, but when we went to see the Red Pine documentary,
Oh, yeah.
the person that did the music for that, she was speaking, but they were saying that all of the poems were never recited; they were always sung.
Oh, yeah.
And so I bet that added.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this poem would be sung. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's neat. Yeah.
Could you read the little portion again that ends with "This is the mind seal"?
Is it in that last part about the poem?
No.
Yeah.
Or before that?
Before that.
About putting the land in the mudra,
Oh.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let me see if I can find that. Mm. Well, here's the part about the hand in the mudra. It doesn't say mind seal, but we'll start there. It's possible to develop samadhi by placing the hand in various locations. I would say during zazen, set your mind on the palm of your left hand. This is the way correctly transmitted by the Buddha ancestors. That's not what you were after, though.
That's good too.
Keep your eyes open for 40 or 50 years. Start with the right foot and turn to the right when you're walking. A step, or half a step of breath, or half a step for a full breath. I can send you my notes, maybe you'll...
It was the part about compassion.
Oh, okay, maybe so. About practicing with compassion. Okay. Oh, yeah, I think it was in here. So he talks about the Arhats and the Pratyeka Buddhas and the Shravakas, and they're all great and everything, but... Oh, yeah, the creative seed of the Buddhas, that part? Let's see. The essence of Buddha ancestors Zazen is the vow to accumulate all Buddha qualities from the moment of arousing the aspiration of enlightenment into the endless future. Buddha ancestors never forget or abandon sentient beings. They have compassion for all creatures, even insects. They make constant effort to save them all. They turn over whatever's merit is produced to sentient beings. Because of this, Buddha ancestors always practiced zazen in the desire realm, in the everyday world, with great opportunity for influencing cause and effect. Buddha ancestors practice this way life after life, world after world, and attain great flexibility of mind and heart. I bowed and asked, how do we attain this flexibility of mind and heart? Ruijing said, to actualize Buddha ancestors dropping off body and mind is the essence of this flexibility. That is why dropping off body and mind is called the mind seal of Buddha ancestors.
So
Dropping off body and mind is called the mind seal of Buddha ancestors.
That is such a great description.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it answers a couple of questions that,
Yeah.
in times I've chanted and I thought, what's this? What is it?
Mm.
It puts it together, the
Does it?
dropping off body and mind, being the mind seal.
There's the mind seal, yeah. And seal there, I think, has like a lot of different meanings, right? Literal meaning of sealing a document, right, with your chop, right, which is a completion and an authorization, And the Dharma seal is like the way all the universe is sort of like embraced by this Dharma, is sort of sealed. Like the universe is sealed in the same way that a document is sealed by the Dharma, by Buddha. Completed, Yeah, like that's the moment of completion when you seal the document. So the Dharma completes our...
Dropping off body and mind is the mind seal.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared this
Mm.
because it's one of the most interesting statements about emptiness that I've heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good appreciation, yeah. Well, we should do a calligraphy of this for the new place, huh? Yeah.
So I was thinking about the generosity element there, and I've been thinking about it the last few days. I wanted to see if I've got the understanding correct or not. It seems to me like it's not just that we have to feel compassion for all beings in the sense of other beings, but we also have to learn self-compassion. Is that correct teaching?
Well, it wouldn't be all beings if you excluded yourself, right?
Seems like that's the hardest part.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Much harder than
Yeah.
compassion for someone else who's suffering
Yeah.
is feeling compassion for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. Yeah. Good thing to practice. Yeah.
That's where breath and sound and all of the focuses come in, though, because
What's the first thing you said, Jerry?
that's where just breath
Breath
and
and
like
sound.
posture and tone and mouth
Yeah.
is like, if I sit and think about myself, I'm inclined to not think very good things.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those things move you, like when we sit together and
Mm-hmm.
start to breathe and then notice other people breathing. Now I can feel compassion for this.
Mm.
As the
Mm-hmm.
space expands.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's kind of what he says in there too, right? You know, it's emptiness is about. So what you said is right, David, and then even better is forget about the idea that you're different from, that you're a different being, right? So that like the self being harder to love is rooted in this incredibly, just most painful thing in the universally mistake, that we're separate, Yeah. And we're so used to it, we're good at carrying it around, right? But it's our deep wound, So it makes sense,
Could you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, that the root of that is the separation that's happened, right? That there's a deep pain in us because we've separated ourselves away from the universe, It's, come by it naturally. Yeah. So me, all this is to heal from that. And I think that's also part of, part of the Zen practice design is the way why we do all this together, right? It's kind of like what Ariel's saying. We're all breathing. We're all walking, starting with the right foot. We're all, holding our hands in this way, so that you kind of after a while it just kind of gets a little bit, am I really you and you're me and you're me you, or we're just us, right? We're just us doing this,
All of our legs are.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So it's one hurting leg body,
And we can't predict the ancestors.
Sorry?
And we can't predict the ancestors.
Well,
They're still doing it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They're.
With Dogen, with
Yeah.
that, because that's what that last little transcript,
Yeah.
it brought me right back from when we were in that temple, and I'm like, whoa. I can feel the coldness of the air, because it was cold in the morning, and I can feel that sense of being in that temple, of being there. And I think sometimes we forget that they're so and that appreciation for the ancestors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep thinking about all this too, with, Hannah's remark about the dropping off body and mind, and, and ancestors, and the mind seal, it all feels like dropping off body and mind is an opening, for
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
ancestors
Yeah.
to be there, and the mind seal.
Yeah.
It encloses all of it,
Experiencing. Yeah, it's like, it's like this opening to.
Yeah. Well, again, I think, yeah.
They're all here. They're all here, yeah,
Yeah. Well, dropping off body and mind, dropping off this, right? And
yeah.
so what's left but openness, right? Yeah. Emptiness.
It's nice to think of Dogen too as a young scholar.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a sage that we're reading
Yeah,
the
yeah.
books of, and
Yeah.
he started somewhere too,
Yeah.
and grew. So,
Yeah.
because when I read Dogen now, I just see him as this sage and this
Uh-huh.
always older,
Yeah.
wise.
Yeah. It's good to
sage.
humanize the
Yeah.
teachers. Yeah. That's good. A good practice. Yeah. For sure.
They seem so lovable.
Yeah.
Piece about the ancestors being here, and when you read Dogen, if you really play with emptiness, that it's not emptiness, it's not lack, but it's the lack of permanence anywhere. There's just no permanence. Then it does open this place where you go, oh, this is what Dogen means when he says your exertion right now is Buddha, which is
Yeah.
the whole world. It's like, you feel it sometimes.
That's the first time, Thich Nhat Hanh always he's always in my mind, anytime I hear emptiness, empty of what? Empty of the separate self.
Mm-hmm.
It's like full of all, things.
Anyone want to bring anything else up, or? Okay, well, we'll move on to some other Dogen next week. Not sure what. If you have a request, favorite tune. Maybe thinking going slowly through Bendawa would be interesting, but I haven't quite decided. Yeah. I'm kind of into these early writings too. Like I talked about a really early piece at Samish Sesshin last summer too, if you recall, his guidelines on studying the way. Hey, Elizabeth.